I'm just going to get my music to bring you.
Oh, I know. Well, the weather is bad. Or they're coming later. Welcome, everybody. Musicians who want to seat themselves up front are welcome to do so. I think the sound is best where you all are, so you can encourage people who drift in underneath the choir loft to come a little closer because of the deadening of the sound in the choir loft. My name is Fiona Carmine. And welcome all of you to Emmanuel Church. I'm excited you all made it here in the rain to come listen to music, and thanks in advance for supporting Emmanuel Music Program with our Bigliardi Memorial Music Fund. I wanted to start off by thanking three recent heroes. Those of you who I haven't mentioned this to before, we're between ministers right now, between rectors, and so the whole church has been kept running on Sundays with heroic efforts by our music director, Fred. Yay. Our administrative assistant, Julene. Hi, Julene. Our senior warden, Polly. And making music. The acoustics here are really lovely and heroic. I think you'll find the program today pretty varied. There's instructions in the program if you want to donate by text. It's a little bit of a lot of clicks because you have to set up an account, but or check or cash is also much appreciated. The bathrooms, the closest ones are that way, close by, and then the more numerous ones are up the ramp and to your left. And afterwards, we're going to have dessert and fruit to celebrate the hard work of the musicians who prepared some pretty awesome stuff that I'm really looking forward to hearing. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kate to introduce Beethoven. To explain of how it is that people are able to watch this live, especially with the lousy weather. It's because Michael Spencer is both recording and live streaming this concert. So thank you, Michael.
Debussy. He was really sort of a romantic. There might be some elements of Debussy, similar chords that you might hear, but he didn't think he was being impressionistic at all. He was from before that era. But I didn't really want to spend too much time on Fauré. I was just thinking that, we go for a long time between concerts where we go to the symphony, they play symphonies, we go to the symphony, they play concertos with the soloists, or we go to a recital and they're playing a sonata, like a violin sonata or a piano sonata, like the Moonlight Sonata. And now we're here at this concert where we have a bunch of different chamber music groups. And they're doing things called quartets, quintets, very nondescript names, not colorful at all. It's like you go to the modern art gallery and you see, Klimt, composition number 3 or something, and it's very undescriptive. And so I realized that we're probably somewhat maybe confused, maybe not all of us have been exposed to these traditions of the chamber music literature. So you'll probably notice that we're playing a lot of quartets today and quintets, and ours in particular is called a piano quartet, but there are not 4 pianos up there. So these names, they rely heavily on tradition. And traditionally, you presume that all the instruments are going to be a string instrument unless otherwise informed. So a piano quartet is really just a quartet, only one of the guys is a pianist. Okay, same thing with piano quintet that we just heard. Now, there are occasionally other instruments as well. As you know, there are lots of instruments in the orchestra. If you turn the page, you'll see that later on we're going to hear part of the Brahms horn trio. So they always take the weirdest instrument and name it after that instrument. That's the horn trio. There's a Brahms clarinet trio, Beethoven clarinet trio. But if you don't hear clarinet in there, then you can presume it's not there. If you don't hear piano in there, it's not there. It's probably if you just hear quartet, it's probably a string quartet. Now, the other thing I wanted to describe is how these quartets, quintets, they have generic titles just like you have symphonies at the orchestra. And they are typically 30, 40-minute pieces, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. And if we all used our groups to play a full piece of chamber music, a full quartet, we would be here all night. So it's not really doable. So we're all playing single movements, maybe a couple of movements of the Beethoven quartet. And I'm just going to, if you don't mind, taking a couple more minutes to describe a few other things that are going on with this naming. You'll notice that most of these symphonies, concertos, sonatas, they have multiple movements. And what do you know about movements? Well, they're parts of the piece. They're about equal length usually. And you're not supposed to clap between them, right? We all know, somebody starts clapping, what are you doing? Wait till the end of the piece. Now, they all have movements, but there are certain patterns between the movements. Usually there are 4 movements, and the 2 middle ones have a slow movement and maybe a scherzo, a juke movement. We're going to hear scherzo of the Brahms horn trio. But the first movements are always the squarest, and they're most complete, and those are in always what they call sonata form. And the fact is, all symphonies, all concertos, all sonatas, all these quartets, trios, quintets, they're all in what they call sonata form. And that's not just this idea that it's multi-movements. It's got 3 or 4 movements, so it's a sonata. That's not really it. A sonata form is each movement is by default, not always, but by default, it's a sonata form, where it starts with a kind of a recognizable theme, like da-da-da-dom, and then often has a development where things get hairy, and then it comes back to a recap, dum-dum-dum-dum. And each movement typically has these sections. Some are simplified, sometimes they're replaced with something like a rondo or variations or something like that. But generally, what you're hearing when you hear, I'm going to hear a violin sonata, you're probably hearing 3 actual little sonatas. Each movement is its own little sonata in there. So the issue is, I don't know if anyone has ever had a student, a child who's done a concerto competition or something like this. Typically, when you see these people play, they have to choose a movement from their longer multi-movement concerto. They almost always choose the first one because it's a very complete one. It's a perfect sonata. It always has a whiz-bang ending, and that's always where the audience accidentally claps. Oh, that was wonderful. A Tchaikovsky violin concerto. The first movement is like 20, 25 minutes long, and almost invariably at the end, everyone's like, oh, oops, that wasn't the end of the piece. The first movements are always sort of the most complete, and they all maybe don't add up to as much color as we could get out of the concert if we all played the first movements. So I've sort of begged my group to play with me the last movement of this one, which itself is a very simplified sonata form. You'll hear, the opening come back sort of 2/3 the way through. But instead of having like highs and lows and a big development and lots of, variety and a whole complete picture, it's more like we've already done 3 movements. And this movement is just a race. It's just a run, the home stretch where you just run from the beginning to the end, and it ends like with a big splash. So that's what you're getting here, the 4th piece of something that had otherwise, a slow part and a joking part, and then that first movement is complete. So this is the 4th movement. It says allegro molto, so it should whiz by.
in advance for any donations you feel like making.